Alright guys, welcome to another question. Brian, sometimes while browsing YouTube, I see video footage of a car driving, either seeing weird things happening on the road, close calls for car accidents, or even people trying to cause scams where this camera proves them to be at fault. Are these people setting up their phones in their windshields to record this? How can I get my phone to do this, and will it fill up the storage on my phone? First off, kudos for kind of trying to piece two and two together to figure this out. You assume that, well, it's probably a phone in the dashboard because phones have a camera and, I could charge it from my car. And yeah, I like when people think and try to build an understanding of something first because it really helps you cement when you learn oh, well, actually, this is what happens. And it's not that far off from what you thought. Are these people setting up their phones in their windshields to record this? They are not. They're actually setting up a special device called a dash camera. It sits in the dashboard and just points forward and records. So it operates just like a phone. It's got a camera, it records things, it puts it onto an SD card, and you can just extract the footage like you normally would. How can I get my phone to do this, and will it fill up the storage on my phone? Well, your phone's not doing it, but you can buy one of these devices and plug it in, and it won't fill up the storage because these dash cameras actually have a really cool system. So let's say I have files on a hard drive. So I have file 1, file 2, file 3, file 4. This is not how hard drives write data, but it's more of just like an example for you to kind of conceptualize. So I write file 1, that's the first 5 minutes. I write file 2, that's the second 5 minutes, next 5 minutes, next 5 minutes. What happens is I do circular buffering. So when I get back to here, I notice, well, file 1 was old, probably not necessary, so I'll delete it. And then file 2 gets the next file, file 3 gets written over, file 4 gets written over. This was 5, so now it goes into file 9, and it keeps bouncing around, so it writes away the oldest video footage. And usually you get an SD card or a storage drive that's large enough to hold several hours worth of footage. So, if something happens, you kind of realize, okay, well, when I get home, I'll extract the data from it before it gets overwritten. Or you can always, turn it off and extract the data. Some dash cameras actually allow you to interface to the camera with your phone through Bluetooth. So you can download files from there. It's great. It's a great thing. It's really cool and neat to, just kind of play around with these and just have one running all the time. Dash cameras have some really neat features aside from that circular buffering example that I gave you. The other thing that I really like is how you can just plug it into the DC port in your car, like the cigarette lighter, and once you turn on your car, once it gets power, the dash camera turns on and starts recording. So you don't have to worry about setting it up, pressing buttons, remembering to press record, any of that stuff. And dash cameras are kind of cheap too. They're like 30, 40 bucks for an entry level, just one that kind of protects you from things happening. Why do people use dash cameras? There's a lot of different reasons. I personally use mine for 3 things really. One, in case I see something weird, I'll throw it onto my YouTube channel. There's a few videos here and there that kind of talk about different things and what exists and how it works. But you'll also see videos where I'll show just maybe a deer acting ridiculous on the side of the road, or almost hitting a deer, or in my case, actually hitting a deer. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to prove innocence or things like that during things like a car accident, or if an animal runs in front of my car, which on my channel there's a video of a deer that ran directly into my car. And there was nothing that I could have done. And when I spoke to my insurance company, they asked some weird questions like, did you see it? Could you have stopped or any of these things? And I said, no, I actually have footage of this happening. And they're like, oh, well, send us the footage. That'll help us expedite the process or make things move along a lot faster. And the third one is kind of like the preservation of truth. And that's something that I place great value on. We look at security cameras, and that helps establish if somebody did something wrong, or just kind of establishes truth. And there's a couple things. The reason I bought a dash camera was because I saw a video on YouTube where a car was at a light, and they just decided to reverse backwards into the other car, and they got out holding their neck like they were kind of injured and, had whiplash and all these things. It kind of looked like they were trying to pull a scam. And what really solidified it for me was, the person kept talking about, oh, I'm so injured, I think we need to call an ambulance, and all these different things, and they're really like acting like they're majorly injured, like they're going to try to have a lawsuit or something like that. And the person who was driving behind calmly points out to the back of their car and says, "Look, I have a dash camera. I have video footage of you backing into me." And the person just gets frustrated, gets in their car, and drives off. So it kind of looked like a scam was intended to happen, but now it's a hit and run where the person ran away. So, it's nice to have a version of the truth so that when you are pressed for these things, you can kind of prove that something happened. And, in the same sense, if, let's say I'm driving and there's 2 or 3 vehicles and, a cop or an officer is, sitting on the road, kind of doing scans of like, who is going above the speed limit. I try to stay right within the speed limit because I'm not in a rush to get anywhere. But let's say that they scan or clock in someone who was going really fast, and then they decide to pull me over and say, I clocked you going in 15 miles over the speed limit. Well, what I can say is, no, you must be mistaken. That was the car in front of me. I have this video now that shows that I am innocent in this situation. Do I see that happening? Most likely not, because scanners now grab like license plates and things like that, but you never know with the way things turn out. It's one of those things where you can just prove your innocence right there. Boom, you are set. Does it sound a little paranoid? Yeah, maybe a little bit, but that's kind of how I operate. Just as a record of truth is a nice thing. And I'll give you one last story that, I wish had ended out the way that I imagined it would. I had just come back from a little trip and I was driving through the neighborhood, and one of my neighbors actually got robbed by somebody. And so, I was thinking, ooh, maybe I had driven home while that car was parked outside of their house. So, like, I could just kind of show, like, hey, look, this car with this license plate was here. So that way, if they have a suspect, they can talk to them and ask where they were during those hours. And if they lied, the video would prove otherwise. And it would just have created a whole slew of, interesting outcomes. But unfortunately, I didn't have the footage on there because it was from a few days ago, and I just reformatted my card. But had it been there, I would have been able to help. So, something like a house robbery, a child abduction, anything, if you could just catch some kind of footage happening in the moment that could be helpful later, who knows, you might save the day. So, dash cameras are cool. They're nice, they're small, they're cheap, they operate just fine, and yeah, I really recommend that everybody have one pointing forward in their car, because there's so many things that can go wrong. If somebody drifts a little bit into your lane and clips your car, or somebody, cuts into your lane and then slams on their brakes and cuts you off, that's kind of a thing where you can help prove your own innocence and, not be the victim of something that you weren't responsible for. So just something to keep in mind when it comes to, using a car, safety, things like that. And also, parents, you can install one in your child's car so that you can review their footage if you ever suspect that they're driving recklessly, or there's other people in the car, or, dangerous habits, or, just to kind of have like a blind eye that can tell what they are doing while they're driving the car. And if they don't like it, you don't give them the keys, A lot of my students might hate me for that comment, but hey, I care about you guys and I want you to be safe. So anyways, thank you for asking, and I hope I've kind of turned you toward the idea of buying a dash cam. I'll link a couple in the description so you can kind of shop around and see what exists. If you have any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Thank you for asking.